Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I am here today to film a Friday Reads video. I'm actually doing this early, much earlier than I usually do. My usual MO is to film a Friday Reads video on a Friday, which is how it qualifies as a Friday Reads, and then I post it on a Saturday. That is not what I'm doing this week because I mentioned in my last Friday Reads video, which will be linked down below in the description box if you'd like to check it out, I am going to New York for a weekend with Joel, and therefore I will not have time to do a Friday Reads video. And then as I was thinking about what to post this weekend and what to do about it, I decided I kind of wanted to try to film a Friday Reads video early because I have finished 3 books. I've been busy, and I'm worried that if I don't do a Friday Reads video at all and kind of wait, it's going to get lost in the shuffle. So I want to do a quick Friday Reads video where I pack in a lot of information and talk about the 3 books that I have finished and kind of look ahead to what I might be doing on the plane as well. So the first one is The Problem with My Normal Penis, Myths of Race, Sex, and Masculinity by Obioma Ugoala. This is something that I had been in the process of reading, or listening to rather, because I did this on audio in my last Friday Reads video. I finished it, I want to say Monday. And it was a really interesting book. So basically, this is the story of Obioma Ugoala growing up in the UK and dealing with racism and learning about how to navigate the world. The interesting part about this book is that you can probably guess from the title, it takes a slightly different approach from most memoirs that cover this sort of topic. He is focusing pretty specifically, but he covers a lot, but most specifically on the problem of sexualizing Black men, both as a sort of tool for sex and also to make them seem dangerous. And just casual jokes that turn into microaggressions, that turn into bigger aggressions and things like that. It's a very different and unusual and I would say fascinating approach to the topic of race and racism in the world, since this is in the UK, obviously not in the United States where I live, but it feels very resonant for the United States as well. I will say the parts of it that talk about more general race feel like they've been covered in other books, and I don't want to take away from his experience, but it feels like this book is at its best when it focuses on his unique experiences and this unique approach that he is taking to the topic of race and racism. He does have a lot of really interesting experiences as well because he is a theater actor, and he talks about how people treat him as if he's a diversity hire. Even with the shows that he has been in, the career that he has built, people still treat it as a sort of diversity hire anytime he makes it into a show. And how infuriating that is for him, who is someone who's clearly a talented man, and how damaging that kind of thinking is. That if you see a person of color in a prestigious role, that it must be because the person in charge needed to think about diversity, not because they're talented, just because they needed to think of diversity. And what a limiting way of thinking about the world. It's an interesting book. I liked it a lot, appreciated it. I didn't love it, but I really did like it. And again, I think it does approach some areas of this conversation that you don't typically see, and that makes it a very interesting and worthwhile, I think, read. So I would encourage you to check this out. I found the audio on Scribd, so it is available if you are a member of that platform. The next book that I finished is actually a spoiler for my book haul for the month of December. It's Flung Out of Space, inspired by the indecent adventures of Patricia Highsmith by Grace Ellis and Hannah Templer. Interestingly, on the story graph, it lists a third author, but I don't see her mentioned anywhere on the book itself. I think I had it noted down. Yes, Joan Shenkar. So she's not on the cover, but she's on Storygraph. So I'm going to throw that name out there. I talked about this book as one of the New York Times' 100 notable books of 2022. I'll link the video where I picked through that list down below. And I had mentioned that I really wanted to check this out. It is a graphic novel. Obviously, it is about the life of Patricia Highsmith, kind of. My library did not have a copy of it. I didn't even really look on subscription apps because I don't really want to do a graphic novel on digital format, I had to find a different page because there was a sex scene in the one that I randomly opened to. So that's fun. I really liked it. I will say sometimes graphic novels can feel a little bit slight. And this feels like it's approaching a lot of difficult conversations and topics, and it doesn't quite grapple with them, and it ends very abruptly. I really could have used another 50 pages at a minimum to really dive into some of the topics and some of the after effects. So basically, in this, Patricia Highsmith, who is the author of The Price of Salt, which was later renamed Carol and obviously inspired the movie Carol. She is the author of the Mr. Ripley books, including The Talented Mr. Ripley, Strangers on a Train, things like that. So in this, she is working for a comic book company, writing comic books. She hates it. And she has been trying to write. She has finished Strangers on a Train. She does manage to sell it, but she is inspired by her experiences out in the world to write The Price of Salt, which becomes Carol. And it's about her identity as a lesbian, how she struggles with it very profoundly. She kind of agrees to undergo conversion therapy, which obviously doesn't take. And the women that she meets who are also part of that group. The foreword is a really interesting piece of information. And it's one of the areas where I feel like they talk about how they really wanted to dive into the more problematic aspects of Patricia Highsmith's personality, because those are part of who she is. And I kind of want to cover that a little bit. Okay. This is a story I believe is worth telling. That being said, I want to be clear. The protagonist of this story is not a good person. In fact, Patricia Highsmith was an appalling person. She was deeply anti-Semitic, racist, and misogynist, even by the standards of her time. I am not being hyperbolic when I say that many of her beliefs were nothing short of evil. And I know I speak for Hannah and the rest of this book's team when I say that we condemn these beliefs as vehemently as possible. Although this is not a story directly about her prejudices, this book contains instances of Pat's bigotry. We made the informed choice to include them because her hatefulness is an important piece in understanding who she was as a person, and it's something you should be aware of as you're reading. And then it kind of goes on from there. What I will say is those bits of evidence are definitely in there, but they are almost incidental. For instance, in a meeting, Patricia Highsmith actually meets with Stan Lee, but he is going by his original name, which is Jewish. And you just kind of see an illustration of her squinting her eyes and repeating the Jewish name. And that's it. That's the commentary that's in here. And so you do get like hints of this problematic behavior, but the book's not grappling with them. And to be fair, as it says in that foreword, that's not the purpose of the book. But especially since this reads so quickly, I read it in a single afternoon and was done. And I would have liked 50 to 100 pages to expand on some more of that and to go a little bit more into the ending, because this deals with her getting the inspiration to write The Price of Salt, and then how it was so difficult to publish because of the way she ended the book and how it was eventually published. But then it just kind of ends. Like, I want more of the after effects. So I really did like this book. I'm glad that I read it. I'll be happy to keep it on my shelf. I would recommend it to you. However, I did want more in the end. It's fine the way it is, but I wish it had sort of expanded on some of those ideas. That's all. And I will leave it at that for Flung Out of Space. The next one that I finished was a bit of a surprise. So I mentioned in my last Friday Reads video that I had been listening to the audio of The Long Call by Anne Cleeves. Well, I liked it enough that I put a hold on The Heron's Cry, which is the sequel to that book. There are only 2 books in this series so far. And it said it would take about 2 weeks. It took 2 days for the whole to become available. So I borrowed it and listened to it and am finished with it. And I liked it. I liked both of the books fine. I feel like I oversold it, the first book, a little bit in my last one. I did really enjoy it. I didn't love it. I think it was just nice and refreshing to find a mystery book that didn't feel like it was trying to mess with my head and that I could just kind of roll along with and enjoy. And I used to turn to mystery books a fair amount, as I was reading, whenever I felt like I might be getting stuck or about to hit a slump, I would turn to a mystery book to help power me through. Lately, I've been turning to like YA LGBTQ books or like LGBTQ romance books in that position, because I've just really left behind mystery thrillers. And I don't really appreciate the modern version of what those are. This feels like a throwback to sort of classic whodunits, and I do appreciate that. But with the twist that the main detective, Matthew Venn, is gay, is married to a man. I will say, 2 books in, their relationship is a little curious. And one thing I did not mention with The Long Call is that I really profoundly appreciate a detective book with a homosexual detective that isn't trying to be a porn at times, because it feels like anytime there's a mystery that involves a gay male protagonist, there's a sex scene, at least one throughout the book, and it always sort of fetishizes or sexualizes the gay couple or the gay protagonist of the book. I appreciate that this does not do that. It allows him to just be a detective who is married, has a committed relationship, and it doesn't try to put you into that part of their relationship. I love that, because it feels like, again, that is just a trope that is repeated again and again and again, and I don't need it. It is also interesting that I don't quite understand their relationship. They're 2 very different people. Matthew, the detective, is very conservative-ish. When I say conservative, I mean he's a rule follower. He's very strict with himself and very disciplined. He was raised in a borderline religious cult that he had to leave in order to be gay and live his truth. So you can see why that is the way he is, but his husband, Jonathan, is much more freewheeling, accepting, kind of embraces the chaos of life. And I can see why they're drawn to each other. But because it doesn't give you much about their relationship, I would love to know what drew them together in the first place. And there's none of that. And it's fine. Again, that would kind of lend itself to getting into their relationship. Maybe that's just something that's going to be teased out over the series, and I would be okay with that. But it's just something interesting to think about. Another thing that's kind of interesting is that this is set in the modern world, and people have cell phones or smartphones and access to the internet, but it's interesting the way in which they use them. Sometimes authors don't really like to have those. You don't want to have people texting each other in the middle of a book. However, it feels weird that this is set in the modern day, and as they go about police investigations and things like that, no one communicates by text. A lot of the time, the 2 detectives working with Matthew Venn will find out something, and he only hears about it in the evening briefing where they catch up on everything that happened during the day. And it's like, does nobody text each other? Like to say, oh, wow, I think I just uncovered a new piece of information, and nothing. And Matthew doesn't text his husband to say like, oh, I'm going to be coming home late. He'll just show up late. It's an interesting way of kind of having modern technology, but also avoiding grappling with it. But I'm complaining, but I did enjoy this book. Whenever there's a third one, I am not going to rush out to get it. I would probably wait for it to show up on one of my subscription apps. I did this one on Libby, both of the books that I listened to on Libby. So I wouldn't rush out to get it on audio, but I will at some point look for them. I will probably seek out other Ann Cleeves books, because this seems to be an author who is writing mysteries that I can respond to. And Lord knows it's been difficult for me to find one of those. So I will stick with that. Those are the 3 books I read and finished this week. I did start a new audio this morning, Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This is one of the books I need to finish before the end of the year in order to complete the Montana Book Company Reading Challenge for 2022. And Joel was a big fan of it. He listened to it much, much earlier in the year. In fact, I had been planning to use a different book for the prompt that it's for, which is a Pacific Northwest Booksellers Association prize winner from the last 5 years. I had been planning to do a different book. Joel listened to this one and recommended that I shift away from it. And from feedback from other people who have read the book in the past or read it this year after he talked about it, it sounds like a really interesting book. So I've only just started it, but that is what I'm doing now on audio. And I obviously had to continue to put Demon Copperhead to the side. And when I did have reading time, I used it for Flung Out of Space. This past weekend, there's no time. It feels like this has been a mess of a year in a lot of ways. And December is really hectic. This trip to New York came up kind of last minute, and we've had to condense a lot of things that we'd usually do. And because we're dealing with a tough year, it's hard to push ourselves to do some of the things that we would typically enjoy. Like Joel had to push me to get the Christmas tree up, and we didn't really feel like doing Christmas cookies this year, which we usually do a lot of. So anyway, point just being, it's been a really hectic month. At this point, pretty much can't wait to get to the week after Christmas. Like, Christmas is done, we can just relax. But I don't want to make this wait until then. It just feels like there's so much going on that I haven't been able to pay attention to this book, and I'm really loving it, and I want to get back to it. I am going to have links down below to information about the HarperCollins strike. By the way, this is a HarperCollins title. I told myself I was going to be better about just throwing that out there and letting you pick up that information and do what you will with it. But anyway, I'm really loving this book. I have not taken a physical book on a plane with me in a long time. I've been relying on audiobooks or just digital books that I can have on my phone rather than carrying a book. I am seriously considering, when we pack tonight, slipping this into my bag so I can take it on the airplane, because that's a solid amount of time that I will be committed to not having my phone. Well, I could listen to Cemetery Boys and probably be done with that by the end of the day tomorrow when we fly. But I'm wondering if I want to do this that way. I haven't made a decision yet. We'll see. Stay tuned. So that's my reading update for this week. Lots going on. Wanted to make sure I got something out because, again, I finished 3 books. I have 2 others in progress. So I didn't want to wait a week, because just on the off chance that ends up being a lot to catch up on when I get back, which is going to be heading into the week of Christmas. And that's even going to be difficult as well, because the Friday before Christmas, we need to go to Helena to see my father-in-law. And it's just, December is a lot this year. Ordinarily, it's a lot and fun. This year, it just feels like a lot. So I'm going to be ready for some downtime at the end of the year. So a Friday Reads will be difficult then as well. I don't know if there will be one that week, so I just wanted to try to get one out right now. And big news is I recorded my Pulitzer Prize deep dive for Now in November by Josephine Johnson yesterday. I am going to work on editing it today when I finish editing this. So I have a lot of work to do. Like, I'm working today. I have a video to edit that's going to be a longer, probably, I think the raw footage is about 47 minutes, maybe 50 minutes, and hopefully I can get it a little bit shorter. So I have that to edit, and then I have this to get out as well. So if all goes well, you will see my Pulitzer Prize deep dive for Now in November tomorrow, if you're watching this video the day that it posts. Time means nothing when you post stuff online. So this is going to be published on a Saturday. The Now in November Pulitzer Prize deep dive will be published on a Sunday. If you're watching this later, both of them are live, and you can go look for the Now in November deep dive right now. But otherwise, if you're watching this the day it was published, again, time means nothing. Social media, you get it. But I'm relieved to have that done, and I'm thinking about what I want to do first. I have some ideas about which Pulitzer books I want to try to get to in 2023. I don't know which one I want to try to prioritize first. I am going to think about it and not rush into anything, because, again, I'm just needing some non-hectic life at the moment, and we will see how all of that goes. But anyway, that's the update for this week. I'm sure there will be more by the time this is posted, but you'll have to wait for another catch-up from that. But I hope you're doing well. I'd love to hear what you've been reading and watching and loving in the comment section down below, and I will leave it there. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.